An Tánaiste, the European Central Bank have pumped an extra €529 billion into the European Union financial system yesterday. Now, that brings the total amount invested to over €1 trillion in the 3-year programme, and up to 800 banks across Europe have taken advantage of this particular programme. Now, at a macro level, this initial tranche and this initiative by the European Central Bank has been described as a game changer. But I think in reality, it has not filtered down to the real economy. And businesses up and down the country are finding it practically impossible to get access to credit and to get loans or proper credit facilities to enable them to protect jobs and create new ones. It is causing businesses, this absence and failure to get credit is causing businesses to reduce their workforces and in some instances to close down altogether. The Taoiseach 2 days ago in the Dáil said that it was the government's intention to meet with the banks in a couple of months' time to deal with this. Now, the Credit Review Office is saying that credit targets are being met, but of course this is based on calculations in relation to approval of credit rather than actual credit drawdown. And it also involves restructuring of existing loans as opposed to any new credit facilities. Despite the fact that deposits are stabilising in banks and banks are getting access to very critical finance from the European Central Bank, it is clear that the banks have been far too rigid and far too inflexible. And every deputy in this House has examples of small businesses and small companies who are not getting access to credit and who are in dire trouble as a result of a tightening of credit across the country. I want to ask you, Taoiseach, in addition to the pressure on mortgages, is it any wonder that the domestic economy is flagging because of this critical lack? And what does the government intend to do in relation to the credit situation, and in particular to get the banks operating properly in the interests of the small to medium-sized sector and in the broader interest of the economy generally?
Thank you, Deputy Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, can I say I'm delighted to see the Leader of Fianna Fáil here himself this morning. Can I also welcome, as he has done, the provision yesterday of the €529 billion by the European Central Bank for the European economy, which, as Deputy Martin says, comes on top of the €450 billion that was provided by the European Central Bank prior to Christmas. And as he says, this brings now to almost €1 trillion the total amount of money that the ECB has committed over the last number of months in particular. And it's certainly the government's view, and it is something that we had been seeking for some time, that there would be a commitment of funding to the European economy in order to support the economy. I agree with him too, of course, that it's important that that works its way right into the economy. And can I tell him, first of all, that both the Taoiseach and I have met with the banks in relation to 3 issues. We met with them just over a week ago. We met with Ulster Bank, Bank of Ireland and AIB, each of the three groups. And we discussed 3 issues with them. The first was in respect of lending to small and medium-sized businesses in particular, so that credit will be available to business to support existing jobs and to create new ones. In that context, we also discussed with them the way in which the banks can cooperate with the government's employment creation strategy, and in particular the action plan on jobs. We also discussed with them the issue of mortgage lending and the issue of mortgage arrears. In addition to that, we are also arranging for discussions to take place with business and banks at a local and regional level. Minister of State Perry has undertaken a series of regional meetings which will bring these discussions right down to ground level, and I understand that there were successful meetings in both Cork and Waterford in recent times. The government will continue that engagement with the banks, and the meetings that the Taoiseach referred to in his reply earlier this week, is part of a programme that the government of engagement that the government is having with the banks. Some of that is obviously at official level on an ongoing basis, but secondly at a political level directly in meetings between the Taoiseach and myself, in addition to the meetings the Minister for Finance, Minister for Public Expenditure will be having with them. And this is part of an engagement by government with the banks to ensure that credit is provided for small and medium-sized businesses, that there is support for the strategy that the government has, which is set out in the action plan on jobs, in order to create employment.
Your engagement with the banks is wholly ineffectual. The bottom line is companies are not getting access to credit. Small businesses are complaining up and down the country. We're all having examples. We're getting examples on a weekly basis of tightening credit, of cash flow being cut off, of a very rigid and inflexible approach being taken to people who want to protect jobs or who want to create new jobs. The banks are looking after themselves and no one else as we speak, Tánaiste. Talk about engagement and regional meetings. We've had regional meetings for 2 to 3 years now. We've had all this discussion. People don't want any more discussion. They don't want any more timid engagement. They want action. They want the funding that has been put into the banks through the state and through the taxpayer, and the massive amounts of money that have now come through the European Central Bank. They want that to filter down into the real economy, onto the high street, onto the factory floor. It is simply not happening. And I put that to the Taoiseach himself acknowledged 2 days ago that many companies will not go through the Credit Review Office for fear of retribution, for fear that they'll be punished by the banks if they dare complain that they're not getting fair treatment or fair access. So we can't wait for months. We can't have another series of regional meetings where people talk politely in halls or in meeting rooms about how nice it would be to get access to credit. This is choking the Irish economy. It's choking the sector that creates most jobs, up to 700,000, 800,000 at the peak of the boom in our economy, and the sector that will have to be the engine for growth and jobs into the future.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, can I just say to Deputy Martin that unlike the previous government, this government is having discussions with the banks about lending to small and medium-sized businesses. Secondly, in his opening question, Deputy Martin wanted to know what was the government going to do to discuss the issue of the provision of credit to small and medium-sized businesses through the banks. The government, Deputy Martin, has already been in talks with the banks about this issue. And let me tell you this. There is nothing. Hold on. There is nothing timid. There is nothing timid about it. The government. You've raised an issue, Deputy Martin, that the government is more than on top of. We have published the action plan on jobs. We have set out the kind of funds that will be established in order to provide credit, and in order to provide start-up capital, and in order to help business to get jobs created. Clearly, the banks have a critical role in that, and it is a condition of the recapitalisation of the banks that they do lend to small and medium-sized businesses, and that they do lend to people who are trying to get mortgages. And it is for that reason. We're ahead of you on this, Deputy Martin, because it is for that reason. We're way ahead of you. I mean, you're asking about something that we've already. You're asking about something that is already being done. And I can assure you that the government will continue to do that, and that no stone will be left unturned, so that credit is provided to small and medium-sized businesses, and that the funding that is being provided through the European Central Bank works its way through the economy in order to create jobs.
Sorry, there's no point in asking questions if you're not prepared to listen to the answer, Deputy Dooley. Deputy MacDonald, please. Deputy Keller, will you cool down, please? Thank you.
Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, you and the Taoiseach tell us repeatedly that you wish to restore Irish sovereignty. Can I say to you that you don't seem to be having very much success? You propose a referendum to give away even more control over Ireland's economic affairs. And indeed, the German Parliament discusses the Irish budgetary situation while TDs and the general public are kept in the dark. The Finance Committee of the Bundestag for a second time has discussed sensitive documents relating to the Troika, your external partners, austerity programme, before the Irish public, members of this Dáil, or indeed the Finance Committee have even seen them. So we have a ludicrous situation where German parliamentarians discuss the economic situation in Ireland while we in Ireland are kept in the dark. The substance, it seems, of these documents is also deeply troubling. The Commission's report suggests that the Irish state may require a mini-budget in 2012. The European Commission appears to be recommending greater cuts and tax hikes. Now, we in Sinn Féin have repeatedly warned that unless there is a change in the direction of government policy, Ireland may not indeed meet the Troika targets and a mini-budget may be necessary. If these reports are true, then it seems our fears will have been confirmed. The report, I understand, also suggests that the Commission demanded a revised asset sale programme from you in December. So can you tell me, is this how 2 billion of a fire sale became 3 billion? Can I ask you, were you aware that the Finance Committee in the Bundestag would be discussing these documents? Do you propose to publish them? Is the state facing a mini-budget in 2012? And did the government cave in to a Commission demand for more state asset sales?
Thank you.
And can you tell us, Tánaiste, and confirm that it is in fact Frankfurt's way rather than Labour's?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, some of that sounds like the draft text for a leaflet. Paper, and I see the Deputy MacDonald.
Maybe could we settle down now, please? There's a time limit on this. Thank you.
Deputy MacDonald is doing a lot of reading this morning. Paper never refuses ink, and neither apparently does Sinn Féin. The document.
Thank you.
The document.
Thank you.
The document.
Would you like to listen to the reply, please? We have an increasing number of comedians every day. Would you mind allowing the Tánaiste to answer, please? Thank you. Thank you.
The document
I didn't hear you out this week.
Sorry, would you hold on there a second? Tánaiste, would you please proceed? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
You're halfway through your time already.
The document that Deputy MacDonald was referring to says a number of things about it's a staff document, as I understand it, prepared by some staff in the European Commission, which was leaked. But it does say a number of things that are very positive about this country. It says that the Irish economy is expected to have returned to growth in 2011. It states that our general government deficit is estimated to have been well below the programme targets. It says that the recapitalisation of the domestic banks has been substantially completed. And it says that, reflecting the strong performance under the programme, financial market confidence in Ireland has continued to improve. So let's put this in perspective. We're talking here about a document which confirms what the government has been saying to you for quite some time, which is that this country's economy is recovering, and it will recover under this government. The document will be published. The document will be published today. A mini budget will not be necessary. So I hate to disappoint you with that. It will not be necessary. I might add that I am unhappy at the way in which this document was handled and the way in which it was leaked. The matter has been raised this morning with both the German Finance Ministry and with the European Commission. I intend to pursue the issue myself, and I intend to discuss it with our ambassador in Berlin, and to ensure that the way in which this document was handled is not repeated.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald, please. Thank you.
You know, Tánaiste, you may wish to try and trivialise matters when they're raised in this session. I have to say, you may be amused at your own jokes. Your backbenchers clearly are. But I guess, I'm going to hazard a guess that people who are suffering from the results of your austerity won't find this a bit funny. I'm glad to hear that you're going to pursue this matter again. You told us this last time. Do you remember the last time that the Bundestag Finance Committee discussed the economic circumstances of this state at length? Do you remember that, Tánaiste? On that occasion, you told us equally that you would pursue the matter vigorously. Now, if there was ever an example of your ineffectiveness and your failure, it surely resides in the fact that we now have episode 2 of exactly the same scenario. And maybe that's not surprising, because you're clearly very happy that Germany, that France perhaps, that the Commission, that outside agencies and institutions would have a first view, a first opinion, and a final decision-making capacity in respect of the economic governance of this state. Minister Varadkar, your colleague, thinks that the referendum is still undemocratic. He obviously would prefer the German parliamentarians take decisions for us.
Deputy,
you tell us that there won't be
Deputy, could I
a
have your question, please? You're over time. Thank you.
You indicate, thank you, Count Corla. You indicate that you have this document. Can you tell us since when do you have it, and how is it that parliamentarians in Germany see it before any member of this House and debate it? And if you could give a serious answer rather than a trivial one, that would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. Tánaiste.
I never give trivial answers, and I don't trivialise, and I don't trivialise what has happened to our economy, or the difficulties that people have in coping with the consequences of what happened to this economy. People who have lost jobs, the people, for example, in Cork this morning who are looking at a situation where they're being asked for voluntary redundancies. I am acutely aware of that, and the government is acutely aware of that. And that is why, Deputy MacDonald, our programme and our strategy is to work our way to economic recovery. It cannot be done, that cannot be done by some kind of abracadabra economics that you seem to be advocating from time to time. It has to be done consistently and over a period of time. You talk about external people external to this country. The reality, Deputy MacDonald, is that the state of the economy that we inherited this time last year was one where nobody in the financial markets would lend to this country, where we had become reliant on finance from external people, the European Commission and the ECB and the IMF. And since then, since last year, we have worked consistently to stabilise the economic situation, first of all, to get growth back into the Irish economy for the first time in 4 years, to pursue a trade and investment strategy in order to get jobs into this country, to pursue a job strategy which was set out in our jobs plan and in our pathways to work. There is no, Deputy MacDonald, there is no easy solution, and there is no quick fix to the Irish economy. The only solution to the Irish economy is to work our way out of the programme that we found ourselves in. That's what gets back our economic sovereignty, to work our way by creating jobs and growth in our economy and in the European economy in order to bring about jobs and get people back to work.
Thank you.
That's what's going to work, and that's what the government is concentrating.
Deputy Shane Ross, please. Deputy Shane Ross, please. Deputy Shane Ross, thank you. Would you please stop shouting? Thank you. Deputy Shane Ross.
Thank you. Thank you, Concola. I think the Tánaiste has missed the point. The point about these embarrassing leaks which came from the Bundestag today is this, that the impression, and maybe the rightful impression, remains that our economic policy and the policy of austerity is dictated and decided and revealed elsewhere. It didn't come here first. That is the problem. And we need an assurance here today that this will not happen again. It's no use. It's no use getting officials talking across on the telephone to each other. It will not help either the selling of the referendum if this impression continues to be given by the Bundestag. What will help the selling of the referendum by the government is if the Taoiseach today, who's in a unique position in Brussels, goes out there and says, look, this referendum which we've got is an advantage to us. Let's turn it into a positive. The whole cabinet was shell-shocked by the fact that there was a referendum. But it can be turned into a positive because it's a wild card in his pocket today when he goes to Europe. And if he goes out there and he says that the Irish people will respond better to a referendum if there are no more leaks from the Bundestag, and if also the Anglo promissory notes come into the equation. Because I heard the Tánaiste say that the Anglo promissory notes were not linked. He said it on, I think it was on prime time the other night. Were not linked to the referendum.
Question, please.
They are, and they are very strongly linked in the riddle of austerity which is being imposed on this country. So will the Tánaiste please, I'm coming to our question now, assure this House that he will embark upon a diplomatic offensive to tell those 27 countries that the Irish people would look much more benignly on this referendum, which they want to see passed, if they looked more benignly on our debt and were prepared to give us a credit write-off.
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, to be honest, I don't know whether Deputy Ross is for or against the referendum. When he came in here when we announced we were holding the referendum, and I think he told us that he was going to oppose it. Now he seems to be suggesting that he might support it in certain circumstances. Let me tell you something, Deputy Ross. Let me tell you something, Deputy Ross. I don't know how you see. I don't know how you see Irish diplomacy working, but I'll tell you how I see it. We are not going to trade the constitutional rights of the Irish people with anybody or for anything. The referendum that we're going to have, is a referendum by the Irish people on whether or not they want to ratify the treaty that was concluded on the 30th of January. Treaty or no treaty, we are continuing the discussions that we had already begun with the Troika in relation to the re-engineering of the promissory notes, which are very onerous on the Irish people and on the Irish taxpayer. We've already commenced the work on that. There is work taking place with the Troika, which we hope will produce a positive result for Ireland. We're not linking it to any treaty. We have been engaged in that for some time. We are going to continue with that engagement. The treaty, which we believe is required in order to ensure that there is stability in the Eurozone, so that there will be investment in Europe and in Ireland in order to create jobs, is something that we will put to the people on its own merits, and we have no intention of engaging in any kind of a trade-off of the constitutional rights of the Irish people to decide that treaty in their own time and based on their own judgment with anybody or for anything.
Thank you. Deputy Ross.
Thank you very much indeed. I now understand why the Tánaiste didn't make the Minister for Social Protection Minister for Finance, because the Minister for Social Protection said in an interview today with the Financial Times, the European Union should cut the cost of Ireland's bailout to help it pass the Eurozone Fiscal Pact in a high-stakes referendum. Now, if that's not linking one with the other, I don't know what is. So, Tánaiste, let's get this straight. Does the Labour Party and does the government, and she went on to endorse that, by the way, in stronger terms in that interview, does the Labour Party and the government not understand the perception and the rightful perception out there of the people that the austerity which is being imposed in this fiscal pact is linked to the fact that the austerity is also being imposed because of the promissory notes? If we can get money off and get a debit write-off on the promissory notes, we will also then not have so much austerity in this country. Perhaps you would get up and you would comment on what Minister Burton had to say to the Financial Times this morning.
Thank you.
Well, Deputy Ross, the government has a record of success in relation to its renegotiation of the entire bailout arrangements and the deal that was done with the EU and the IMF. You will recall that we successfully, despite the scepticism of some members in this House, we did successfully negotiate significant reduction in the interest rate for the financial arrangements that we have, which is worth €10 billion to the Irish people. We have been, and we continue to be, as I've said, engaged in talks with the Troika to explore possible ways to re-engineer the promissory notes, to find a less expensive solution for the Irish people by, for example, replacing them with other financial instruments with long maturity. Now, those discussions are underway and we are continuing with that work. The Minister for Social Protection made it very clear in her interview that those negotiations and the negotiation of the treaty and the holding of the treaty referendum are not linked. They are separate processes, and we are going to continue with that process until we get an outcome that is satisfactory for the Irish people. Thank you. With regard to the treaty itself, the reason that we believe that the treaty should be ratified is so that there will be stability in the euro, so that we will get the investment in Europe and particularly in Ireland that will create the jobs, bring about the economic growth that will help us get out of the economic difficulty that we found ourselves in, and will get us out of the EU IMF programme that the government wants out of as quickly as possible.
Thank you.